CFA L BITS Pilani Goa campus. Hello and welcome everyone. We thank you for all joining in on time. I'm Ritik and I'll be co-hosting this talk with Shruti. Despite the time difference, we are grateful to the speakers for joining us. Some information to be passed on before starting. If you have any questions during the talk, please type them out in the question box on the control panel below. The speakers will try to address those when they are not speaking, and we also have time for a question answer session at the end. On that note, let's get started.
As a part of the BITS2Series talks under the Alumni Mentorship Program, we present before you BITS2BSCHOOL session, wherein we have invited our most accomplished alumni to throw light on their experiences and their journey, as well as to provide valuable insights on prospects of management and business studies, which happens to be one of the most popular career options after college for many engineering undergrads. On our panel today, we have with us Mr. Sumiran Mittal, Mr. Kshitij Jain, and Mr. Shree Kapoor. We hope that this session clarifies all doubts and provides the right path to pursue your dreams.
Okay, so our first panelist is Mr. Sumiran Mittal. He's a business student currently pursuing a master's in management degree from Hcc Paris and also a STEM double degree with the National University of Singapore. He graduated from BITS Pilani with a BE in manufacturing engineering. Presently, he is a visiting consultant at Google Singapore. In the past, he has interned with the Singular Group, Amadeus, and the Goldman Sachs, to name a few. Passing the virtual mic over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ritik. Let me start off by thanking the Alumni Relations Cell at BITS Goa for inviting us, especially with much experienced colleagues like Kshitij and Shree, who've done brilliantly since graduating. So a bit about myself, as Ritik described, I graduated with in BE Manufacturing. I'm not sure the branch still exists. I heard it's been under review for now. But yeah, I'm from the BITS Hyderabad campus, and I'm from the 2014 batch, graduated in 2018. And I joined Hcc Paris right after graduating in 2018. So there isn't much between my journey between BITS Pilani and Hcc Paris. But I can say for sure that I think it was in my second year of engineering itself that I was pretty certain that, okay, I wanted to pursue management as soon as I graduated. And I was certain that I wanted to do so in a much more international environment. And probably that's the reason that I opted for Hcc Paris and the Masters in Management program in particular. So what else can I say about my time in BITS? In terms of Cgpa, probably not the best guy to listen to, because as far as I remember, my graduating grade was 7.5, enough to have the first class on a degree, but yeah, certainly not good enough, I'd say. But seemingly that sufficed. And I have no full-time work experience because, as I said, I joined Hcc Paris right after graduating from BITS Pilani. Now, in particular about the Masters in Management program is that it's a degree abroad where you don't require work experience, unlike the MBAs, in which ideally you have candidates who have 4 to 5 years of stellar work experience, especially in top B schools. I'm sure Shree can talk about it more down the line. But in terms of Masters in Management program, I actually like the selection criteria because it's very well-rounded. They not just look at your grade, they look at your entire profile, right? So, for example, in my case, my GPA wasn't great, but for some reason, my 10th and 12th grades were pretty good, and so was my GRE score. And I did talk to the Associate Dean of Hcc after I graduated, who's now the current Dean, and he did tell me more about the selection process. So it's not just your grades that matter, but like I said, your holistic profile. So let's say your grade is around 7 in BITS, right? But you have done a ton of activities. They might be in clubs, they might be in departments, they might even be in academic committees. They do acknowledge the fact that, okay, this guy has spent time doing X, Y, Z. That's why you could not focus on his studies. So it's a very holistic way of approaching a candidature, and that's super helpful. I'd say particularly to BITS because of the fact that we have the PS station. So we have PS1, PS2, because of which we get good amount of work experience in our undergraduate degree itself. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of BITSians who apply to the MIM programs. And that's the reason I think in my batch out of 20 Indians, we had 7 BITSians. So that's a pretty good record, I'd say. In terms of what I experienced at Hcc Paris and how my BITS degree has helped me, I can say for certainty that, okay, It's not the core education in manufacturing that has helped me to do strategy or marketing or finance, obviously. But it's the skill set you develop while you're in an engineering college. You know how to rationalize, you know how to think, you know how to be analytical, and boy, is it handy in a management degree. I'm sure Shreya and Kshitij would agree with me that you have to be super analytical, super practical, and really straightforward. In B school, I'd say the difference from engineering has been drastic. Because as far as I remember, in BITS, I was barely in my room. I was outside doing this work or that work or meeting friends or, barely being in the classroom. Okay, please do not take my word for it. Grades are important. But that's not the same for masters, right? Because suddenly you have to gear up. You are much more serious in life and, you have got to prove your worth, right? So you go to classes very often and you are super busy on weekends. You have to do assignments, case studies, projects, whatnot. So I'd say it's a very big difference, but I'd say it's a pleasant difference because you get to learn so many new things. You are in a very good environment, and the better the school, the better the people around you. And that's the core premise of business schools, the people there. So it's not just networking, but it's learning from them while you're there and potentially after you graduate. Um, I guess that's all I have to say in terms of my experience. I'd be happy to take questions down the line and passing the mic back to the alumni relations team.
Thank you, Mr. Sumiran, for sharing your valuable insights. Our next speaker, Mr. Kshitij Jain, completed his MBA from IIM-Ahmedabad, where he graduated as a gold medalist. He graduated from BITS Pilani, Goa campus with a BE in Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering. He has also cleared CFA Level 2. Currently, he is an investment associate at Miras Investments, Dubai. He has previously worked as an investment banker at Barclays and interned as a consultant at BCG. I turn it over to Mr. Kshitij now to address the aspirants in attendance.
Thanks, Shruti and the Alumni Relations team. So this is 201088PS329G, and it's always good to see you guys and always good to connect with the fellow Bitsians. So before I start, I have more love for Bitsians than my IIM-Ahmedabad friends. So always I'm happy to connect with you guys. So towards the end, we can definitely keep it informal, but I have been given an agenda by your alumni relations team to speak about my experience, when did I decide to do MBA, and I have a list of 5 questions. So just let me just go one by one, and towards the end, we can definitely keep it interactive. So honestly speaking, during my Bitsian days, I was not a studious kind of a guy, and it was more of into the activities, maybe joining the FAM department, the finance and asset management, or the DOSM, which is I don't know what it's called at Hyderabad and Pilani, but it's like the sponsorship marketing department, and maybe sports, and it was a nice time at BIT. So I don't know if Hyderabad and Pilani campus guys are jealous of the Goa campus people, but yeah, the campus was really beautiful, and it was a gala time at BITS, and you make a lot of good friends, and mostly the engineering college, it's like first time in hostel. For the boarding school students, they already have experienced it, but for the likes of me who have been to the day schools, like not a boarding one, so it was a first time hostel experience. You make good friends, and you really enjoy your time over there. So during my engineering days, it never occurred to me that I need to go for an MBA degree. The only aim in my life was maybe to get a good job out of it. And I was from electronics instrumentation. Definitely, I don't know how the scene is there right now, but I guess it's quite tough for the electrical and electronics guys to land up a job if it's not National Instruments or Texas Instruments. So my major aim was to get in those two. Unfortunately, I was not the best guys in my department, and they were like brilliant electronics engineer who landed up job in National Instruments and Texas Instruments. And but yeah, BITS always has an upper edge over other colleges. Why I owe to BITS was the PS2. So we got the 6-month internship, and I joined Credit Suisse, the Pune, the back office team. And this is what BITS does differently from other institutes so that's why I say we are sometimes better than IITians, because we get this opportunity to at the end land up a job, and IITians definitely, given their brand name, they get more interviews, but we get to showcase our skill sets at the PS school and get the PP offer. And at BITS, we do get the skill set to manage, to work, to get the, as Simran mentioned about the analytical skills, and also maybe we are wired that way. So yeah, that was my journey. I started at Credit Suisse with no knowledge of finance at all, and I was put to work. I was doing a back office job, but yeah, I started learning. I really liked what I was doing. Then fortunately, one of my seniors at BITS themselves, she recommended me to Nomura in Bombay, which was my first step towards finance, to maybe a middle office or a front office role. After working 1.5 years at Nomura, I realized there is more to finance, and I need to do an MBA from maybe India or abroad if I really want to get into likes of investment banking or private equity, where I can maybe do a proper front office role, and not, and it would be also easier for me to maybe career switch if down the line, if I'm not interested in finance and maybe consulting, because once I'm like 2.5 years into finance job, maybe at Credit Suisse or Nomura, then moving into consulting really becomes difficult. So basically that was my motivation, because I really like to try different things, maybe a career switch or maybe a front office role. So that was my motivation to maybe give a CAT or maybe GMAT. So this was my third year at Nomura basically, and I gave CAT luckily, and GMATs, and luckily I got into Columbia, and secondly I got into IIM-Ahmedabad. So it was a tough choice to make between the two, but I don't like it was maybe a tough choice, but a random one what I chose. So I was honestly indifferent between both of them, but yeah, it panned out well. So maybe in the hindsight, if I say I don't know how would I have done at Columbia, but yeah, at Ahmedabad I can say I did well, and yeah, so that was all the motivation. It was entirely career, honestly. The MBA was, at that point of time, I never thought I'll make friends, or maybe I'm looking out for some networking or something. It was just basically a career switch and to get an MBA degree or a brand name on my CV. So yeah, so that was maybe how I went to IMA. Now, second question about the Cgpa and the work experience. So yeah, I was around 8.7, 8.7, 8.8 for in the electronics department. Yeah, it is considered to be decent. I don't know how the grading system right now is, but at my time, for me, it was really difficult to get grades, and especially in the electronics subject. Like the courses, like I never understood transistors honestly, and there were professors who tried hard explaining, but, and even I got a zero in my one of my microsystems course in third year, so you can understand how good an engineer I was. But yeah, ultimately it's fine. uh, it's always like where you work hard, you can, or you ultimately in life you would match your skill sets with the job you're doing. So at MBA, I could say like it did give me an edge, like being an engineer and having a work experience. Definitely, it gave me an edge. From because a few of the friends who were freshers, let's say, or like who were from a commerce or a arts background, definitely they have a better communication skills than us, and they do really well in the marketing courses. They're kind of more creative, but at the end of a day, uh, any engineer would he could learn quickly grasp things, and he could match them in their own skill set, but he also brings his of his own. So why would I would say work experience was important for me, because I could quickly grasp the coursework in the finance or like the other courses, because I've already applied them in my work, and I could think a little out of box. It was not only just the academic thinking what I was bringing to the table. So in India, the good about the top B schools is they follow a case study method similar to, I guess, the global colleges, and which is really nice. Like you get a real life situation, you have to ponder, then there is a class of 80, 85 students, they're discussing, debating. So that's a really good experience. Uh, so move, so moving on to like how important is CGP and work experience, I would say both of them are really important. Like if you have aced in one of them, let's say if you graduated top of your department, or if you are a topper at BITS, that would be a very good plus point. So usually how these schools in India at least do is they see your spike points in your CV. So what spike points is like, you're a gold medalist in the undergraduate. So let's say if you have a CAT score which barely qualifies you for an interview round, So during the interview round, they will look at your spike. So maybe if you do not have work experience, but if you're like a DR1 or a institute rank 1, that's a spike. They automatically understands he might not have a work experience, but he's a smart guy or he's a hardworking person. So that is one. Secondly, obviously, is your extracurricular activities or co-curricular activities. If you have had a leadership position in one of the departments, that does help in getting into the Indian B schools as well, because they do see it positively, because they're making leaders for tomorrow. And if you already have done some kind of a like a leadership work, it definitely helps, because they know you can be better at management. You have already learned few concepts of managing people, though subconsciously, but yeah. So that is another one. And so if you're a fresher, definitely CGPA and extracurricular activities do matter. And and at the end of the day, you have to show somehow you have to bring something to the table, right? When you're going to an MBA school, you cannot be like, I am just there to learn. They would be also asking you, what can you contribute to the class? Like what are the things like the other peers could learn from you? Because at the end of the day, it's an ecosystem where you learn from each other, and you uh, the best minds of the country are there, and you try and learn from each other. It's not only the professors you learn from, but from each other as well. So you have to bring something to the table. Maybe uh, even I've seen like a fashion model, or maybe let's say international player or a Ranji cricketer. If he has got a good acads, they are definitely welcomed into a MBA Indian B school. So that's what you bring to the table, and that's what you get when you learn from your peers. Then talking about experience, so if you are a 2 or a 3 year experience, particularly in India, Bangalore does give a lot of weightage to the experience. Ahmedabad, I would say it does, but as I mentioned earlier, like if you are a fresher with a stellar record in terms of academics and also maybe of extracurricular, ex- you are okay with no experience as well. You can get in definitely. Calcutta, like I haven't seen the recent scoring system, but Calcutta, as per me, like for the 2 3 years when I was monitoring what their scoring systems are, I think so. It's high CAT score. It's similar to what FMS is. So brilliant, sharp people. That's what Calcutta looks for. A looks for hardworking, smart guys, and B is like more towards experienced guys who are a little bit of mature in their thinking and of that sort. So that's about the Indian B schools. And for work experience, yeah, it helps in your admission, and definitely helps in your class participation and while you are discussing with your peers. So that's about like CGPA and experience. And if I have to talk about how life is different at a B school or engineering school, I feel that totally depends on a person. Like he can live a similar life in both the schools. He can just party all like 4 years of his engineering, 2 years of MBA. You can just party along like four and two, and you will do just good. You can be a studious guy at both the schools. You maybe you like it totally depends on a person, like how what kind of a friend circle you make, what kind of things you want to focus on. So both of them at the end of the day are school. Just said one thing is like a B school becomes a little bit of more rigorous, especially the Indian B schools. I could say this for the first year, because at BITS it's a 0% attendance, right? I think so. It's still there. I don't know if they have changed it. For my time, it was a 0% attendance, and I love to manage my time, and so that was there. At Ahmedabad, it was like 100% attendance. So I just went from 0 to 100. So for the first week, I was like, oh my god, I have to go for every other class. I can't miss a single class. But yeah, that's the nature of it. The school, it's more rigorous. Apart from that, I think so. Mostly it's similar. Like and just in B school, maybe you become little more serious about your career. During the engineering days, I'm not sure how much you focus on your career, or how much you how much you are serious about your life. But in B school, I think a little bit of maturity level comes, and you guys tend to think more about your career, what kind of job you want to be in, what kind of a career you want to make. So apart from those two, yeah, I think so. It totally depends on how you want to live both of your lives. So that's about the difference between a B school and engineering. And I guess just give me a moment. I'll just look at if I missed something or not. Um, okay. Yeah, and with respect to how different Indian B schools are one abroad, in terms of exposure, placements, and peer group. I guess like I can talk about Indian B schools maybe, and then Sumiran and Shrey will talk about the abroad B schools, and you guys can deduce and compare yourselves, because it won't be fair for me to speak about how what kind of peer group are there in abroad B schools, because I won't know, right? So for Indian B schools, yeah, peers are, yeah, definitely they're smart. There is a story, like the first year I was sitting at IIM-Ahmedabad, I thought like they're like CA rankers, they're ITNs, they're like SRC and St. Stephen's people or all around me, and I'm like, uh, I hope I just clear. I don't flunk over here. And yeah, so they're like super smart people, and communication wise, analytical wise, like it makes you humble. Like honestly, it's a very humbling experience, especially the top B schools in India, because you would definitely find like if you would think you are good in something, but definitely there would be people who are better than you. In a, Definitely there would be people better than you. So I used to think I really played table tennis well. And when I went to Ahmedabad, I thought like I would be the best player over there. And yeah, so no one at Ahmedabad at least would be better than me. But there were like two or three people. So it's nothing like that you are the best in something. The peers, it's a very humbling experience. You will get smartest of the peers. You will learn a lot from them. And about the about the academics and all, the professors, definitely they're the most experienced professors you would ever get. It's not only about like the concepts you will learn from them, it's also about like how they have applied in their life, how they have gone through their journey, and that's the most interesting classes. So there was a professor in a class who used to sing after every particular class and after a case study, and like in his songs as well, he would like convey a message, like why did he choose this song for a particular. So it's fun actually, like, and it's at the same time learning as well. You always remember those kind of teachings. So at BITS as well, I'm not disregarding. I have a true love for the BITS professors. They are the most, I would say, the analytical professors, and uh, like I would say like they are the best in terms of engineering, but it's something kind of different at Ahmedabad, Bangalore, or Calcutta, where the case study kind of teachings are really nice. I think so. I've covered most of it, like what was out for the intro. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer and like during the Q&A round. Meanwhile, I'll try and put some answers on the chat which you guys have asked. Back to Shruti and Ritik.
Thank you for sharing your story with us, Mr. Kshitij. Our third panelist, Mr. Shree Kapoor, is currently pursuing MBA at the Harvard Business School. He graduated from BITS Pilani with a BE in mechanical engineering. He is a co-founder of FinGig. Previously, he's interned in product management at Crediverso and as a venture capital analyst for Bharat Inclusion Seed Fund. He has also been a German Chancellor Fellow. Over to you, sir.
Thanks so much, Ritik, and the Alumni Relations Cell. It's been a privilege to be on the same panel as Kshitij and Sumiran. So thanks so much for organizing. And guys, I graduated in 2014 from Pilani, so I feel old on this panel. But yeah, I'm gonna bore you a bit with some history about my experience. I'll be really quick, like take you through the work experiences I've been in, and then talk about the questions that have been given to me. So it may sound strange that I'm on a panel about business and management careers, but I didn't think about business and management when I was at BITS. I really wanted to do R&D. I was very technical, and I was a mechanical engineer. I like to think I was a decent mechanical engineer. So I joined Mahindra and Mahindra, which was one of the two firms that was offering an R&D role at that point of time. So I joined them for 1 year. I worked on engine design, but working through 1 year, like I figured out that I liked the commercial aspects more than the technical aspects. So I decided that whether I would stay in a company like that, or I would like to go into a more dynamic and challenging environment, which would be offered by a startup. So this was 2015, 2016. As probably very few of you remember at that time, it was the startup ecosystem in India was on a high at that time. So through some bits and connections, I got into a startup called Mitra. Had a fabulous time there. Handled strategy, business development, and operations. It was an early stage firm when I joined. There were 4 people, and we grew to around 200 employees in a matter of a couple of years. So it was a great learning experience for me. I felt that I still didn't think about business or management like doing an MBA at that time. Like my whole focus was just to sort of like understand more about starting a business. And then I was offered a fellowship by the federal office in Germany called the German Chancellor's Fellowship, in which I went to Germany, help businesses and investors invest in emerging markets in the clean tech domain. So I thought I was lucky and also prudent in a way that I made a big bet on clean tech, that clean tech is going to grow in India in 2015, 2016, and it is going to take a lot of people, from where they are to a very high pedestal in future. So I did that correctly, and my focus was, when I was in Germany, my focus was either trying to start my own business or trying to get into a B school to gain the necessary skill set to do that eventually. I started my company in Germany for 3 months. There were some issues. It didn't really work out, so I decided to apply to B school. Applied to B school, was really interested in technology and really felt that if I'm going to be in technology, US is probably going to be the best place. So applied to US B schools, got selected, and yeah, I mean, this is my second year at HBS, still building a company in the online experience, in the experiences space. It's still in stealth mode, so a shameless plug. Would be recruiting interns in the next few months, so I'll reach out again once I do that. So coming back to the questions that I had to answer. Okay, CGPA and prior job experience requirements. I don't know, when I was at BITS, like juniors couldn't ask a senior CGPA, but I'm gonna just say that it was not 9. It was, if I remember correctly, it was around 8.6. I already spoke about my prior experience. What are the qualities that any reputed B school looks for in a candidate? I think it's a mixture of 3 qualities: academic excellence, habit of leadership, and impact, whether it's professional or social. So I think every B school fundamentally considers these 3 qualities and places different weightage to each and every one of them. So for example, if you're applying to HBS, they would look at habit of leadership and professional and social impact a lot more than probably academic excellence. But it's just these 3 criteria that most B schools look at, especially international B schools. And also B schools in India and B schools in the US, also B schools in Europe are somewhat different in the kind of candidates they want. So typically US B schools will require at least 2 to 3 years of work experience before applying. The trend is towards younger candidates. So earlier it was 6 years, now it is 4 years of average work ex, but it's still going to stay from 3 to 4 years of work ex. Has my engineering background helped? I like to think that it helped, and it helped to a certain extent. I think the quantitative background that you get also helps you in your GMAT, as well as some of the quantitative courses courses in your MBA. Though I would also say like not much. If you I didn't take a lot of finance courses, so it didn't really help me to a large extent to what like it will help people who are interested in finance. But yeah, I think it brings in that quantitative rigor, which is hard to build at a later point of time in your career. So if you already have it, it's good. Life in B schools. I think life in B schools is very different than the life in undergrad institutions. I think in B schools, typically, it's much more rigorous than BITS. I mean, there was a time at BITS where I rarely attended any classes. You can't do that in B school. HBS is 100% case method driven, which means that professor just speaks for 20% of the time, 80% of the time is people speak from their own experiences in the class. So it's very, very engaging. You can't just like get away with not attending classes. So engagement is much higher. And I think people have a better clue of what they want to do with their lives at B School. So a lot of the relationships that you build in B School are very intentional. You want to, you know your sweet spot. You know the kind of people who would be important to you, like professionally and personally in the next few years. And that's how you try to build those relationships. And difference between Indian B schools and the abroad ones, I would just talk about US B schools because I have not done an MBA at an Indian B school. I just think that the diverse, I already had international work experience before going to HBS, but still I would say that there is definitely a lot of value in having people from so many countries in your class. They bring that amount of diverse perspectives. And though many of the cases are specifically focused on US companies, etc., but still you get that diversity in terms of work experience, in terms of geography in class, which really helps you cultivate a better world perspective. Yeah, I think I was able to answer most of the questions that were put to me, but happy to take any further questions through the Q&A. And yeah, thanks so much. It's been a real privilege coming back to BITS, at least virtually. And a big shout out to people from Goa. Although I'm from Pilani, but I spent my PS1 at the Goa campus and I have very good memories.
Thank you, Mr. Shree, for letting us in on your journey to Harvard. Now we'll move on to the question and answer segment of this talk. You can also address questions in the Q&A section in the chat box. Over to you, Ritik.
Yeah, so we will try to accommodate as many questions as possible, which have come into the G form. For the first question, we would like to have the views of all the panelists. So, what all scholarships options are available to B schools, to students who are like applying to B schools both in India and abroad? Like we can go with Mr. Shree Kapoor first.
Yeah, do you mind repeating the question a bit?
Yeah. So the question is, what all scholarship options are available to students who are applying to both Indian B schools and the ones abroad?
Sure. I'll just talk about abroad. So people fundamentally believe that you're applying for an MBA to increase your salary on a very fundamental basis. And you will get a good job after MBA. So honestly, like for B schools abroad, there are not many scholarship options. There are a couple of, at least for Indian students, there are a couple of scholarships like Jain, Tata and KC Mahindra scholarship, but that is available. The amount that they give is mostly in the form of a loan scholarship without an interest. So it doesn't really amount to a lot when you're comparing to the high fees by USB schools. I would still say that the US schools individually offer a lot of scholarships especially to international students. HBS and GSB, Stanford GSB and HBS have need-based scholarships, and they are fundamentally very generous. There is a waiver of like 30 to around 50-55% on your cost of attendance, which includes your cost of living and tuition. So it depends on like B school to B school, but and there are very few like 100% fee waivers. So fundamentally, if you are really want to like do a B school degree from the US, I think everyone should be prepared to at least take 30 to 50 or 60% of the amount either as a loan or funding it themselves.
Okay, we can go with Kshitij sir next.
About the scholarships, so during IIMs, I don't think so there is any particular scholarships available. But yeah, there are like corporate specific scholarships which are available throughout the 2 years you are at B school. So there would be maybe a Citibank scholarship, maybe Aditya Birla scholarship, and different competitions which would help you get a good amount of money. Like the prices are like in lakhs and something. So definitely those are the kind of scholarships and money you can win. But academic purpose scholarship, it's like usually at the end of 2 years to like few like 10 or 20 people. And apart from that, yeah, obviously there is a merit cum need scholarship, and that also you can avail. So these are the kind of scholarships. So it's mostly like the major ones are the basically corporate scholarships, which are like around 7 to 10, which you can definitely go if you are participating in there some events or maybe some competitions. So yeah, apart from that, there are no other scholarships.
Okay, finally to Sumiran sir.
Yeah, so there are a couple scholarships which are actually quite good for master's program in France. The first one is the Eiffel Scholarship, which is actually quite tremendous because you get a monthly allowance to a certain limit, and it's pretty good. And it can easily cover all of your living expenses, and in fact, you end up saving a decent amount which can go towards your fee. The second one is called the Char Scholarship, which is provided by the Indian government. Similarly, it's like Eiffel. You get a certain monthly allowance. It's on a lower end, but they take care of auxiliary things like your travel, your insurance, and so on. The third scholarship is provided by HCC itself. It's called the Hcc Foundation Scholarship, actually Hcc Foundation Excellence Scholarship, and it's awarded to outstanding applicants to the MIM program. So it's not a lot, but it's approximately to the tune of 5 to 8,000 euros, which is deducted directly from your tuition fee for the overall program.
Okay, great. So the next question is addressed to Simran sir. The question is about the job opportunities in European Union. So the question goes, have heard from multiple people that getting a job in the European Union, particularly France, is really difficult for non-EU folks. Is it just because of fluency in French, or is this problem persists regardless for Indians? Also, what all locations does HEC give you a job opportunity at?
Cool. So I'll answer the first part of the question, and I like it how first question itself is the crux of the biggest issue of applying in European institutions. Hit the nail right on the head, you guys. So yes, I'm not gonna be too casual or be too diplomatic about it. It's bloody difficult landing. Yeah, am I on? I think the video and stuff was. Yeah, it's super difficult, all right, getting a job in the European Union primarily because of the language issues. So, for example, you pick up consulting. If you want to do consulting in any of the continental European countries, it's super difficult. I'd say it's practically impossible without having first-hand knowledge of the language there. And I'm not talking about business level. You have to be fluent, absolutely fluent. And it might seem unfair, but it makes sense because consulting is a purely client-facing business, right? And in order to actually get the work done, you need to be able to communicate with them. So it's super difficult getting into consulting in continental Europe, especially France, obviously, because you need French. And I cannot say a lot for investment banking because I do not have experience, but I do know for a fact that it's slightly easier because the world of finance, even in continental Europe, most of it is done in English. So I know a few people who are in firms such as Crédit Agricole, Barclays, and Société Générale in Paris. But the only people who are in consulting in continental Europe are in this particular field called healthcare. Basically your life sciences. Because life sciences globally, it's done in English completely. So that's one option that you guys have. Simon Kucher in Germany, Simon Kucher in Paris, and basically any other firm which offers life sciences consulting. Having said that, one of the most lucrative options for Indian students for HCC Paris is London and the Middle East. So I know a couple people who are doing consulting in London. There's this one guy who's in Bain, London. There's someone who's in EY Parthenon in London. And obviously there are plenty of investment banking guys in London because obviously London is a big hub for banking. And HCC's MI program is actually terrific. I am not a big finance guy myself at all. So I did not take up the program, but it is pretty good. You get to learn a lot and you get exposure to a lot of firms in London. The next most lucrative option which I believe was second part of a question, which Geographies at Hcc provide access to, would be the Middle East. Because from my batch itself, I think, I know for a fact that four of my friends are going to do consulting in the Middle East. I think one is in BCG, a couple are in Roland Berger, and one is in Kearney. So that's more or less how it pans out in terms of jobs. Yes, it is indeed super difficult, but then again, if you're working for a corporate, it might be easy to get a job in continental Europe. For example, if you're working for P&G, it's done in English. If you're looking at B2B firms like Amadeus, it's again in English. So that's something you'll have to keep an eye out for. But the good thing is that once you do land the job, once the employer is ready to actually have the interview with you and you pass through all the stages, visa is not an issue at all. So that's a very, very big plus. You can work there freely as long as you want and as long as the employer wants you to be there. Having said that, the good thing about Hcc is because Europe itself, it's so small, it's so international, it gives you access to a lot of opportunities. I know a friend of mine who, upon graduation from Hcc, is working in New York. He's working in Royal Bank of Canada in New York. I know a friend who got a job in Hong Kong. People working in Dubai, London, Canada. There's even one person who's working in Johannesburg. I'm talking about Indians because the ball game is very different for Europeans and for Indians. Let me make that crystal clear. Hcc might be the number one business school in Europe, but it's a very tough nut to crack after graduation for Indians, right? You might think that, okay, like in BITS, you have campus placements, it will be nice and breezy. It's not like that. For Hcc, the job is you guys get into our school, you get a brand image, that's it. We're good. After that, it's completely on. You're supposed to network, you're supposed to find people you connect with, the people, they'll give you the leads, and then you're supposed to follow through on them. It's a lot of work, something frankly that we are not used to, but that's how it is supposed to be done. I'm pretty sure Shrey would agree that it's something similar in US and from his experience in Europe. So I guess, that more or less covers it. But then again, the best part is that you're not limited to scope and geography. Right now I'm in Singapore and I'm doing a project with Google, and man, I mean, the world is a platter, right? It's just that you have to be good enough to sniff an exciting opportunity and brilliant enough to actually follow upon it and go through with it.
Okay. So the next question is for Kshitij sir. It reads as General Engineering Male, GEM, is the only kind of student that gets zero quota at IIM, and like IIM quotas are very powerful. So any tips for the GEM students aspiring for B schools in India?
I guess why do you guys need quota, right? You're much smarter than others, so it's just like you are maybe competing among yourselves. And if you have cleared BITS, BITS does not have quota, right? Yeah, so why do you need to worry about quota? Just do your best and you will get in. Like it's nothing about quota. Yeah, so if I would say it's not about like the other students are not smart, the people who come with quota at IIMs, even those guys are really smart. It's just that you can think of it in this way, right? Like if there are 400 students coming into a batch, so 200 students who are coming from quota, 200 who are not. So at least you are getting, like you are not competing with those 200 who are coming through quota. They're applying through maybe a different channel, and those guys are also smart. Like trust me, if those guys also if there is no quota and if they like all 400 students they're competing, it might get tougher. So don't think about quota at all. Just do your best. Maybe you are better. If you work hard, if you're smart, you'll get in. So yeah, I do get it. Like you might think like maybe a CA guy might get in at a 97 percentile, and you really need a 99.9, 99.8 of a percentile. But you also have to acknowledge the fact that maybe cracking the quant and LIDR section, you are much more maybe you trained from the beginning. So that is also something you need to take. Maybe for him getting a 97 percentile is much more difficult than you getting a 99.8. So yeah, just work hard and be smart. Nothing else.
Okay, so the next question is addressed to Mr. Shree Kapoor. It goes as, I will be starting my career this year. What are some pointers that I should keep in mind during my work ex that I can leverage for my application later on?
I'm probably give you a very cliche answer on this. I honestly think that you should not think of a B school or an MBA as a destination. It is a means to something. So if it makes sense for you at a later point of time in your career to do an MBA in order to reach somewhere, for example, you want to, let's say, start your own company, or let's say you want to become a partner at a private equity firm. Yes, I mean, probably doing an MBA makes a lot of sense for you, but I normally like stay clear of, like picking one B school and just like aligning my whole career based on that particular B school. But even given that, I would still say that be very conscious about your choices in terms of career and what you're doing. If you're like a software engineer from India, you're in probably one of the most competitive candidate pools ever. So just think about ways in which you can differentiate yourself. Maybe there is something you can do on your extracurriculars, and just don't do it just because you want that on your resume. Just don't go there and volunteer on Saturdays at a food shelter just because you want it on your resume. What they want is like leadership everywhere. So go somewhere like where you can actually create a difference. You can actually be like hold a formidable or hold an impactful post, and that should align well with your hobbies and passion. So I mean, if you really, I don't like that approach that like you decide on a B school just after college and like tailor your whole work ex around that. But if you really want that, what I would do is I would go to LinkedIn, look for like alums who have gone to those schools, look at their work experience, and just try to see some patterns. All B schools do some pattern matching. You can see that specific people who attend specific, like for example, consulting firms, they are a big funnel to the B school. So just look at that, and you can probably figure out a few career choices. But at the end of the day, after a particular point of time, it's a black box. Like, I don't know, probably if you speak to the admissions committee, they can give you a better idea. But I would just say that be long-term oriented in the kind of career you are thinking about. Be try to be in a career which offers you a non-linear growth, which is like something exponential if it's possible, and just sort of like treat MBA as like a means to a destination rather than a destination itself.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. So the next question is for Mr. Sumaran again. This question is about the kind of degree to pursue. So they're asking if there is any difference between MBA and MIM, like do firms differentiate or prefer a particular degree over the other? And about the MIM course at HEC in general and how relevant it is in the industry.
Right. So I think the first part of the answer would be pretty straightforward, because there's obviously a difference between the MBA and the MIM programs, and hence there are two different programs, right? The primary facet is that for MIMs, you do not require a work experience. For MBAs, in Europe, at least 4 to 5 years is a given. You have to work that long before getting to the program. So obviously, when it comes to recruiting, you would not expect a guy who has worked for 5 years in the industry and then done an 18-month MBA course and recruit them as an analyst. That just won't work. So that's the basic difference that exists between these two branches, is that when you are in an MIM, you will obviously join the firm at perhaps one level lower to the guys who are in the MBA program. And this is what I have seen so far from my experience in HCC Paris, though there have been cases where even Indian MBA graduates from HCC have had to join as an analyst in a few firms. But obviously their promotion is fast, is expedited, because of the fact that they already have a good amount of industry experience. I just like to address one more question before that. So even if you do have, let's say, a certain amount of work experience before you go into the MIM program, you would be viewed, or you would be recruited in the same capacity as another candidate who has not done full-time job. And a friend of mine, a senior of mine who had worked for us at Goldman, and I think then joined Bain in Belgium, he was telling me about this, that, okay, once you're in the MIM program, it does not matter how much experience you've had before, you join in a similar role. But obviously, it's different for MBAs because you have significantly more work experience. And perhaps you possess some kind of industrial, let's say, expertise, which you can leverage for a particular type of industry in the consulting firm, or you join a corporate who specializes in that particular industry. The reason this factor is prevalent in Europe is because the MIM program is actually historically quite relevant in the European work sphere, I can say. Perhaps not so much in the US because there are very limited direct entry or limited no work experience master's programs in management in US. Shree, do correct me if I'm wrong, but at least while I was applying, I found very limited ones like Kellogg and maybe Duke. But in Europe, obviously, it is very well recognized. And not talking about Indians because I do not know so many old Indians who've done the MIM programs, but I know for a fact that Europeans have just done the MIM program. They are at very good positions in the firm. They are at the level of principals or even directors. I assume that to be promoted to a partner level, you might need to do an MBA, but a lot of these folks do end up doing an executive MBA. So it's an executive program from the top colleges in the world. And obviously, if you want to get to a partner level or, senior partner level, you might have to do an EMBA. But I'm certain that once you do the MIM program, you're covered. You're covered for at least 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years. Unless you want to have a drastic switch in the career, a drastic switch in the industry. Or maybe, let's say, you work in the consulting industry for 8 years and then you want to join the private equity industry or, a specialized VC firm, you might have to do an MBA. So there are a lot of variables, but there is no beaten track that you might have to follow. Okay, you do an MIM, you work for a few years and do an MBA. No, it's something like that. It's upon you, it's upon how well you perform in the corporate, and that's what matters. And as for the second part of your question, I believe it was how relevant the MIM program is, right? So as I said, it would not be very wise to do an MIM program in Europe and then apply to a job in India, or then apply to a job in the US, because as a rule of thumb, I'd say that, you study at the place you want to work at least after graduation. Again, Kshitij, feel free to comment on it if you have differing views, but that's the general rule of thumb I've seen and I tend to follow. And the MIM program, it's expected in Europe, it's known in Europe, and your recruitment is driven through it in Europe. So at least I'd say after graduation, it's better to look at the European and the Middle Eastern, obviously it's a given, geographies in order to find a job, because that would lead you to have the best chances.
Okay. Thank you, Sumiran sir, for elaborating on the MIM course. The next question is for Kshitij sir again. It reads as, how difficult is it to switch geographies after pursuing an Indian MBA? Have things gotten better for Indians who want to reside in the United States post MBA, considering the Biden effect?
Okay, so maybe I can just answer the first part of that question. Second part, I think Shrey would be better to answer, like the Biden effect on for the students who want to reside in US. So the first part of, like, if you have to switch geographies post an Indian MBA, so how does it work is like either you can directly, like from IIM-ABC, either you can directly get placed outside. So, but for those, it's like mostly a couple of consulting firms which provide you with the Southeast Asian opportunities, maybe Kuala Lumpur or Vietnam, and couple of them provide you with the Middle Eastern opportunities like EY Partner on strategy, and so these are the consulting firms which hire for directly for the international offices from IIM-ABC. And for the finance jobs, like there are market jobs in Hong Kong, but yeah, it's very tough to get in those. Like only like 1 or 2 students out of 400 get in those, and you kind of your prior work experience matters for those jobs. So those are like the international offers directly out of the campus. So that is one way you can maybe go beyond India. Second is like 1 or 2 years down the line after working for a consulting firm, you can ask for maybe a short stint outside in the geography. So usually MBB, the McKinsey, Bain and BCG, they do send out to Europe, US offices. I'm not sure about the exact technicalities about those, like how and why, like how you have to apply. But yeah, those are the opportunities like after 1 or 2 years. From the investment banking or the markets role, as well. There is an internal switch, which can happen like 1 or 2 years down the line. It won't be to US, but yeah, for the London, Hong Kong, and the Middle East, it's quite possible. For US, I know a couple of investment banks which do that, but usually the US IB or the PE firms, they hire from the US MBA schools. So that is another opportunity. And then laterally, if I would tell you, like, if you want to switch maybe the companies, it's little tough. It's more about like what kind of a headhunter or reaches out to you, and what alums have you got in those firms. So if you have a good connect with those alums, and if you have networked well, then a lateral hire is possible. So one is a lateral hire definitely through networks. Then second one, as I told, it's like internal switch, and third one is a direct hire from the campus. So these are the three ways you can maybe work abroad outside India after pursuing MBA from an Indian school.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Shree sir, would you like to take the second part of the question regarding the Biden effect on like students who want to move to US? So, like,
Guys, yeah, I feel like this is a question to be answered on CNN, and everyone in America is talking about this. I'll give you my take. I mean, my take is that the immigration situation will not get worse. It might get better. It may stay the same, but it will not get worse. That said, the immigration in the US at this point of time is not as it used to be like 20 years ago. I mean, I see so many BITSians here. I have met some of those in the Boston community, and they all came here 20 or 30 years ago, where it was like very easy to come here, start your own business, and just like attract investment. So, but I still think that I'm going to do like entrepreneurship full time after HBS. If you go to a stellar B school, if you go to like the top 7 or the top 10 B schools, there are a lot of like other resources that are there to help international, not just entrepreneurs, but like people who want to get a job here. There is like a STEM certification for an MBA right now, which is, if you take certain courses, you will get a STEM certification, which means that you will get a 3-year OPT visa, which means that you don't need to go into that lottery, which is honestly a black box. So I say that, like, if you're going to USB schools, there's a good chance that you have an opportunity. Of course, like, you have almost a sure shot at being in the US. If you want to be in Europe, of course, like a European B school probably makes more sense for you, but it is still a global brand in some ways, so you could easily like switch geographies. I just like wanted to address one more question that has been in the Q&A for some time, and I thought that 256 characters will not do justice. So people talk about the huge fees of doing an MBA from the US and whether it really makes sense or not. I think it depends on an individual's personal risk appetite. So personally, if you're very risk averse, you will be, I would suggest that you will be taking a risk not just on the loan, but also on the immigration situation in the US. So if you're very risk averse, then probably it's not something for you. But as someone, like, I come from a middle class family, don't have significant amount of ancestral wealth or something. So I would say that, like, for me, what was important is the kind of network I'm building and the kind of brand and the learning I'm getting at HBS, like, is more for the long term. And in the long term, I'm eventually getting more out of like what I put there. There are generous scholarships. There will be a significant loan, but I spoke to a lot of BITSians before applying, and most of them like really convinced me that it's a fair investment.
Yeah, thank you for answering those two questions. There's one more question for you. How does the work X matter at the M7B school?
Yeah, I think first of all, like, M7 is a very old terminology. There have been so many changes in the top B schools. If you ask me, the list of top B schools will be a bit different than what you're used to in the B school rankings. I'm sure my compatriots and my colleagues will also agree that the rankings are just like very random, and probably like one year you're on top, the next year you're on the bottom. I mean, I would just say that work experience is important for two reasons. One is, see, you're joining a community where they want you because they want to also learn from you. Like, what do you bring to the table, and you also want to learn from others, right? So because I come from like a clean tech startup background, like I'm able to contribute a lot in class when it comes to like dealing with issues related to like fundraising, dealing with issues related to like going to different markets. So that's the value that I bring to the table, and it's very important, especially in a case method where you have to contribute in the class, and that's how you get graded. I think the second reason work experience is really important is I think I think there are theories and there is like practical elements of doing business. Every business involves some kind of leap of faith. Every business involves risk. So once you have like experience across multiple businesses, you have a fair understanding of what risk means and what are the various experiences you have had in your life, and you can relate it to what the professor is teaching in class. So that's the kind of like value I think that work experience brings. I don't know. I'm not sure whether the question was more about what kind of work experiences get you into a B school versus like work experience is important. Did I answer that correctly?
Yeah, it was kind of like what kind of work experience you need.
Oh, sure. So I also mentioned in the chat there are two kinds of ways in which you need to get into if you want to get into a stellar B school. Like, one is the conventional way, like get a really good Cgpa, go into a top consulting firm like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, or probably ATK as well now, and work with them for some years, work in venture capital or private equity, and then you have like a very short chance of like getting into a B school. Of course, this also means that you have some amount of like extracurricular experience. The other way is like a bit unconventional one, like you try to be in markets which offer non-linear growth, where either in a very high growth startup or like getting some sort of international experience, or getting something which is more of which is very different. For example, like my time in Germany where I did this fellowship, my experience straddled policy and business. So I also worked with the government to develop the policy, and I also worked on the business side, working with investors, etc. So my experience kind of became like a very eclectic mix of various different functions. So either you go totally the unconventional way, or you go to the usual way, which is like be played by the book, get into a top tier consulting firm or an investment bank in India, and use that to apply to a B school.
Thank you for your answer, sir. The next question is for Simran, sir. Could you please explain about the SEMS program? How much do students have to pay, and do they find their final jobs through the partnering school or through Hcc?
Okay, so I guess this is like one of the easiest questions that has been here for the night. I'll happily answer that. So the brilliant thing about SEMS is that you have to pay zero for the entire program, because it is essentially a specialization. So once you do your first year, it's a 2-year program, right? The MIM. It differs by school, but in Hcc it's a 2-year program with an optional gap year that I took. So you have options to do a particular specialization in your second year. It can be finance, strategy, marketing, sustainability, or it can be SEMS. So SEMS is basically an international business major in which you get a double degree as part of the SEMS Alliance, and you get to visit a partner school for an exchange semester. And because it's termed as an exchange, you don't have to pay any fee whatsoever, of course, other than the convenience fee and the insurance fee. So in some ways, it's a brilliant program to pursue because it has its own network around Europe, and it started off with a network of management schools around Europe, but it has extended steadily to encompass schools in almost all of the continents in the world. You have American schools, you have South American schools, you have Hong Kong, you have Singapore, and you have other Chinese schools as well. So it's like a very global program in which you have a very good network of students, and you have a lot of partner companies. For example, McKinsey, Novo Nordisk, Alpha Sites, and Google. So SEMS has a very reputed brand image in terms of the corporates, because a lot of SEMSis do end up joining these corporates. right? Now in terms of job, again, like I said before, once you go to management school abroad, it's not like your bachelor's or BITS in India. You do not get a job because or from the college. You're supposed to work hard on your own. You just get the branding on your profile. That is it. So all HEC will do is that they will have career fairs. They'll involve all the best companies across the continent where you can come and meet and talk and network and build connections. But that is pretty much the extent of it. After that, it's in your hands how well you connect with these people, how well you follow up, how well you sniff out the right opportunities and go through with them. Similarly, for partner school, for NUS, I'd say that during the introductory speech, I have not heard a man so blatantly say that, hey guys, you know what, piss off, we're not going to help you find jobs. You have NUS, you have the time here, sorry for my language, you are in NUS, you have the time here, go do it yourself. So that's the way it is right outside, because obviously for NUS, we are here on a semester's exchange. They would be more concerned about, and rightly so, about the students who are the home students for NUS, the students who do the MIM and the SEMS program at NUS. And this is something which reverberates throughout all the universities in the world, or the SEMS universities in the world, right? That is not to say that they'll turn a blind eye if you need help. They'll definitely be there if you need help, but 100% the effort has to come from your end.
Thank you, Sundaran sir. The next question is for Kshitij sir again. So, what level of communication skills is required for having a good shot in the interview, and how does it vary between the IIM?
Okay. The second part vary between IIMs. I'm not sure what do you mean by that. Like,
I
you
mean,
mean
like,
like,
do all require like the same level of communication skills? Like how you said about the Cgpa, like some require very high level, while some
okay.
will take moderately. So,
So, like so like there are like similar companies coming to all IIMs, right? Like it's nothing like there might be few who are very selective to coming to only a single IIM, but almost like there are similar kind of cohorts which are coming to all IIMs. So there would be consulting, there would be investment banking, there might be a private equity finance, basically which comes in a finance cohort, consulting, marketing jobs, and so if I would say like about the communication, the basic level of communication is required by the all, and I don't think so. No one who has gone through engineering days or maybe worked in particular company would face the challenge of not having a good or a basic level of communication skills. Uh, so those are important if you are able to like communicate fluently, and more than communicate fluently, it's about like understanding the thought process of the other guy, understanding what he's trying to question you on, and answering those. It's the interview is not only about communication; it's also about like answering what being asked, and and people would call your bullshit. Honestly, they would if you just try to get through the interview only on basis of communication. So particularly for investment banking or the finance role, you need to have your concepts on track. You need to have them by by your heart, and you need to have them correct, 100% perfect. And even for the consulting, you need a good analytical mind. You need communication does play a little bit of role in the consulting, because that's the kind of what job demands. So maybe a little higher than what IB and PE jobs require, but still you cannot just get through the interview only by your communication skills. You need like some substance in your answers as well.
yeah, and sir, from the point of view of the GD and the personal interview, what would be your take?
Okay, so from point of so GD and so for what I answered was mainly for the personal interview point. So as I said, the IBP, consulting, marketing, wherever the substance is required, you need to understand other person's personality, answer what exactly being asked of you. So that's the personal interview point and like basic level of communication. On GD, I guess GD is I'm not sure. Like I have not gone through so many GDs, like maybe a couple of GDs, but over there also it's not like so in communication it's not like the person who speaks the most, but who speaks what is relevant. So that is what I feel the GD is also about. So you wait for your chance, you hit the bullseye, and you get through. It's not like you need to make like 10 points or you have to ramble about things, but you make 3 points, but good points, and so GD is all about contributing, right? So why is a GD round taken is like when you are in a discussion at a firm, maybe about the problem solving or maybe about a new product launch or something like that, what kind of contributions you're making. So if you speak 10 irrelevant things, that's no benefit to the company. So it's just a replica of like how your board meetings would look like, how your discussion rounds in the company or the corporate level would look like. So you need to speak, you need to be crisp, you need to be accurate, you need to be relevant. So I guess on GD, just focus on those points.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the question. The next one is for Shree sir. Is law and MBA, the combined degree, a good option to choose, keeping in mind the workload and the future after completing the combined course?
The caveat is that honestly, I don't know much about the course. I know very few people. I mean, I know very few Indians who take the JD plus MBA program. I think I honestly don't know a lot, but I would just say that like law school is pretty rigorous, and of course, like as law is very different in different countries, so it takes some amount of time and effort for international students to just like get into the rhythm of what's happening. And I think it's a long. I believe that it's a 2 to 4 year course. I think it's a 4 year course or something. But yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know much about it. I definitely believe that there are certain parallels between and certain overlap between the law school and HBS. I have personally taken a course which is on deals and negotiation, which is taken both by students at the law school and the business school. But beyond that, I just see that it has more value for like people who are lawyers and wanting to get a business background than the other way around. But don't quote me on that. I don't know much about the course, honestly.
Thank you for your answer, sir. The next question is for Simran, sir. Is there any bias towards anyone during GD or PI?
So for HCC or for any other MIM programs, in fact, the three I applied to, at least we did not have any group discussions. We had only the one-on-one interviews. So how the process works is there are two stages. The first one is obviously application stage, where you put in your letters of recommendation, your CV, your essays, your competitive exam scores, and certificates and whatnot. And once you are through with it, then comes your interviews. From what I understood from the Dean of Admissions is that you could be a stellar or probably even the best candidate in the first stage. You could have excellent academics, you could have great extracurriculars, but if you bomb your interview, you will not get through. So it's not a percentage based that, okay, you know what, your CV, let's say it's 40%, your GPA, it's 40%, interviews 20%. No, it's basically each stage that you have to clear, and you have to kill it. You have to nail it at every stage, right? So in terms of PS, I don't think that, there's anything which can be considered to be bias, because obviously I have no benchmark to compare it to, right? It's a one-on-one interview. I don't have other candidates whom I can say. But from my experience talking to my fellow batchmates at Hcc, it's all about how you handle yourself. Your interview can be 15 minutes long or it can be 45 minutes long, right? Generally it's 30 minutes long, but it depends on what they see in those few minutes. A few questions are, repeated, like, okay, tell us a bit about the profile. What do you intend to do in the B school? Which major do you intend to pursue? What do you plan to do after B school? It should all line up, right? You need to have a coherent story as to what you have done, what you intend to do, and how will the B school help you get there. So as long as you clear the criteria of being succinct, of having good communication, obviously that's a given. You need to have good communication skills for B schools, and how well you can put your point across. That's all you need in the interview. Just one suggestion from my end, guys: be yourself in the interview. It's very difficult to feign I'd say even confidence. I know it can be super nerve wracking, but as long as you're yourself and you answer questions with a very natural cadence, you should be fine. But to sum up, there's no particular bias when it comes to interviews, so do not be worried about that.
Thank you, Sumiran sir. So the next question is for Kshitij sir. Since you've worked in a financial role both in India and Dubai, what are the perks and benefits of having a career in finance in India versus abroad?
So I don't think so I qualify like answering like what are the perks and benefits for working in finance abroad, because it's just been like 6-7 months I have started working, and Dubai has a very different culture for than working in finance in Hong Kong, New York or London. So maybe first I'll start with the perks and disadvantages of working in finance as a whole. So perks, definitely you get a good money. Like if you're in front office, you really make good money in markets, IB or private equity, and you get to connect with good guys. Your network is with like the CXO levels at the corporates. So those are the perks. You get to learn from the best of the minds. So that is another one. Disadvantages like you have to slog in for really long hours, and by long hour I mean like around 18-20 hours a day, and eve like you might not even get weekends sometime. And after a point of time, you start thinking about the burnout, and you do tend to burn out. And sustenance is really difficult. And like in couple of years, you can get fired easily. So it's up and out. Mostly it's up and out. So if you don't perform well, you are out. Even sometimes you take a conscious decision to not to work for 18-20 hours a day, because maybe once you get settled, once you have a family, that's not what you might want to do. So those are like the big disadvantages. And this is particularly for the IB and the private equity markets are not that hectic. They are, but yeah, even for those like on the weekdays, you might not get time. So that is about on general working in finance, what are the pros and the cons. If I would compare India with, let's say, Dubai, so India definitely has long working hours. The culture over there is more hard working, because it's about supply and demand, honestly. So like there are 10 best brains in India for a single job, and definitely there is a lot more competition. So you have to work more hard. In Dubai, it's people do maintain work-life balance, and you usually get the weekends off. And I guess Hong Kong and New York are also pretty same as India, not like as Dubai. So usually the financial hubs like Hong Kong, Singapore to some extent, then New York and Bombay in India. You have to put in a lot of hard work. You have to be smart, and you have to be your A game at all points of time. Otherwise, like it's just up and out. Dubai, it's much more chill. You do get time, but yeah, it's about the career choice. Like how do you want to live the life?
Okay, thank you, sir. So this question is now addressed to Shree sir. So the question goes as, I've predominantly spent my undergraduate years building up my profile for a technical role. How do I go about molding it into an SOP while applying to management programs, considering I'm more inclined to pursue engineering management a few years down the line?
Is this for me?
Yeah. Do you want to
Yeah.
read it again?
Yeah, no, I got it. So, I mean, if you look at even the B school folks who are at B school, right? So we have around 34 to 40 people from India in my batch, and around 20 to 25% will be from a purely technical background. Like they worked with ITC in very technical roles. Some of them worked with Japanese companies in a very manufacturing oriented roles. So I think the difference there is that how do you make them understand that what you're doing has implications beyond technical stuff, right? So if you're probably like, if you're like me who did engine design and development, if you can make them understand that you understand the nuances of what your job is doing on a macro level. For example, if you're managing a plant, you're probably managing like 3,000, 4,000 people. You're managing, you're basically contributing a lot to the top line and the bottom line of the whole company. You understand the macroeconomic implications of some of your company's decisions. You understand the market well. I think if you are able to prove that you are not just someone who is just focused on their job, but who also understands the larger level impact of what they do and make a compelling case about it, I think adcoms view that positively. Like in my HBS interview, a lot of questions were around how do I see the renewable energy scene in India. They asked me about Modi's policies, and it was a very, very macro level discussion. So, and they even asked me about my technical role at Mahindra. They asked me about like how many parts I managed, what were the implications if there were like certain shortages or surpluses in the market. So I think they just like want to see whether you have a very holistic mindset about what you're doing and whether you can create a lot of value in the long run by being on a business facing role.
Okay, and so there's one more question which has been actually addressed to only Shree sir, but we would like to like have all your views on it. So, do admission committees prefer a person with diversified work ex, or do they prefer a candidate with solid experience only from one industry?
Yeah, honestly, that depends, right? So, honestly, that depends. That depends. Like if you switch jobs every 6 months, probably I would not call that a very diversified experience in terms of like applying to a B school, right? So they need to understand that you're not someone who's a job hopper. Your career has a trajectory which can be explained in terms of like an underlying foundation, which may be a passion or a relentless desire to achieve something, right? So for example, like if you have done, I mean, consulting, like people who do consulting do tons of different projects and a lot of them are not even related. So yeah, in that way, you're basically having a very diversified set of experiences, but it is under the umbrella of the consulting domain. So that way it's fine. I think it's just like what matters is the quality of the experience that you're getting. Like if you are an intern at 10 different companies, you've been an intern, I don't think it's beneficial. But if you are someone who can show that, okay, 2 years you worked in like a back end role somewhere building software, and later after those 2 years you came ahead, became a product manager, became in a very front facing role, you can demonstrate career growth, etc. I think that is much more valuable than you just having experiences for the sake of it. I think I mentioned this previously as well. What matters is the quality of your experience rather than the quantity.
Okay, Kshitij sir, what would be your take on this with respect to at least Indian business schools?
Sorry if you could, Ritik, I was not answering. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so do admission committees prefer a person with diversified work ex, or do they prefer a candidate with solid experience in a particular industry?
Okay. For Indian B schools, okay. So yeah, it's difficult to answer honestly because see, the quality of your work experience definitely matters. So how they would look at it is, so let's say if there is a single person who has maybe worked throughout in maybe a tech job like for 2 years, and then he's applying to B school. So it should marry your answer to like why MBA. So if you have worked for 2 years in a single tech company and you say like I want to go for a finance job, that's why I want to do MBA. It's kind of a mismatch. Like why didn't you try before? So that is one. So work experience should definitely marry like what are your life goals? Why do you want to go for an MBA? Secondly, I kind of concur with Shrey on the point that if you have like a 4 month experience, one, four in the another, like if you have switched three jobs, and maybe all of them are of the same level or the caliber or in the same field, that does show that you are like not so, yeah, you are not loyal to the corporate, and that might have a negative impact to some extent. But yeah, in the other way, if you show a progress in the sense like for the first 6 months you may be working for maybe a kind of a job you didn't want out of the campus, but you were able to switch after 6 months and you held on to it for, let's say, next 1 year, 1.5 years. That's a positive that you have progressed in your life. You did what you wanted to, and maybe you're taking a next step. So I guess it all depends like how how easy it is for you to convince the panel with the kind of work experience you're bringing in. If you have such 2, 3 jobs and if you're able to convince them, that then it's completely fine. Like if you should have a strong, basically a logic and a reasoning behind if you have switched, and if you haven't, like if you have a logic and a reason, that then it makes sense. It just not should be a random like I just got bored of the job. That's not a logic. Like there should be a proper logic to whatever steps you are taking. So I guess like it's all about like marrying your answers to the panelists during an interview, and also like what if have you switched or not switched your job.
Okay. Sumiran sir, you can like elaborate on the MIM degree. Like, what would your view be on this?
Honestly, I think Shreyas and Kshitij's answer were very succinct. They covered everything. There's not much value I can provide, but I can do add on to something Kshitij said right at the end, is that all that matters is how well you can convince the panel, right? And let me tell you one thing, guys, those people who sit there in front of you, they're not idiots. Most of them are actually alumni from that particular university, and they know exactly what you're talking about because they have been in those shoes, right? So if you think that, okay, you messed up in some job, but you can put a positive spin on it and show it at the interview, you will be caught. You will be caught red-handed. Having said that, again, like Shranship said, it's not a negative to come from differing industries, differing companies, as long as it makes sense, right? Also, for you guys, it might not be a full-time job. If you're going for an MIM, it might be internships. For example, in my case, like in my gap year, I did a 6-month internship in the south of France in corporate strategy. Then I did a 6-month internship in Munich in consulting, and now I'm doing a strategy role again in Singapore, right? So it should all add up. It should make sense why you have done what you have done and how will it tie up with business school. And one thing I can add is that, as Kshitij and Shrey said, why it might be viewed negatively is because once you graduate from that university, you are the flag bearer, you are the ambassador for that university. And if you keep on leaving jobs, that does not leave a good impression. And let me tell you, prestige is one thing which matters a lot, at least in this particular field. So they don't accept you only based on the credentials, but how good an ambassador you can be for their brand, for their heritage once you graduate.
Okay, so this brings down the curtains to the BITS2B talk. We are extremely grateful to all the panelists for sharing their perspectives and views with us. I hope the panelists too enjoyed the session.
Yes, Ritik, thanks a lot for organizing this. I definitely enjoyed. And just on a leaving note, I want to say like if there are some questions which I am unable to answer, you can always mail it to me. I guess Ritik and Alumni Relations would share my mail ID, or maybe even reach out to me on LinkedIn, and that's fine. And if I'm unable to accept some requests, it's nothing again. If I'm able to accept some and not others, just think of it like maybe I'm lazy or I haven't checked my LinkedIn. So please do not take it too hard. Like if I'm unable to accept some of those. So yeah, and always the questions are welcomed.
Yeah, I share a similar sentiment. This has been an absolutely fabulous talk. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, the Alumni Relations cell for organizing. And same here. I like feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn or through my email. Happy to answer any further questions. And yeah, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, hope to answer as many questions as possible and see you guys in different places in the world in the near future.
Yeah, adding on again, thank you, Shrey, thank you, Ritik, and thank you, the team, for inviting the three of us here. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, but to add a personal message that, okay, hey, you want to connect for XYZ reason, that just makes it a bit more positive for us to accept the invite, because I'm sure Kshitij would have said that, you get a whole host of requests. It's very difficult to accept each and every one. And yeah, my mail ID is also there on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. And as Kshitij said initially, BITS is always close to your heart, no matter which institute you go to later on. So we always have time for you guys. It might be a bit later than you might expect, but we will get back to you. So thank you so much, and it's truly been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Yeah.
To Shruti to deliver the vote of thanks.
Yet again, I would like to express our immense gratitude and thank the panelists for making today's talk possible. It was amazing hearing all of their experiences, and I'm sure all of the doubts that were there in each aspirant's mind were clear. Thank you all for attending this talk. We hope that it proved to be insightful to you. Please fill up the feedback form that we will be putting in the chat box. Each suggestion is valuable to us, so please do that. Good night and all the best.